The show is starting. The finest in underground television.
The listeners. "Is there anybody there?" said the traveler, knocking on the moonlit door, and his horse, in the silence, champed the grasses of the forest's ferny floor, and a bird flew up out of the turret above the traveler's head, and he smote upon the door a second time. "Is there anybody there?" he said. But no one descended to the traveler. No head from the leaf-fringed sill leaned over and looked into his gray eyes, where he stood perplexed and still, but only a host of phantom listeners that dwelt in the lone house then stood listening in the quiet of the moonlight to that voice from the world of men, stood thronging the faint moonbeams on the dark stair that goes down to the empty hall, hearkening in an air stirred and shaken by the lonely traveler's call, and he felt in his heart their strangeness, their stillness answering his cry, while his horse moved, cropping the dark turf neath the starred and leafy sky. For he suddenly smote on the door even louder and lifted his head. "Tell them I came and no one answered, that I kept my word," he said. Never the least stir made the listeners, though every word he spake fell echoing through the shadowiness of the still house from the one man left awake. Aye, they heard his foot upon the stirrup and the sound of iron on stone, and how the silence surged softly backward when the plunging hoofs were gone. Walter de la Mare.
Here before you is an opportunity to plumb the depths of the mysteries that confound and intrigue us. A chance to ask the big questions. Dr. Hal is not concerned with questions of trivial matters or of facts that are easily gathered elsewhere. Dr. Hal seeks the questions that transcend fact. He stands before you, ready to take questions that used to be brought to wise and aged sages on distant mountaintops. These questions can now be asked from the comfort of your living room. No Sherpas required. Simply direct your favorite web browser to our new and simple-to-use website, AskDrHalShow.com, or click the Ask Dr. Hal button below our live Twitch broadcast. You will be spirited away to the magical Co-Fee portal, where all you need do is submit your burning question in the handy message field, and assign a monetary value you wish to place upon it. Our stage ghost will then convey your message live to Dr. Hal, and he will answer in the manner that only Dr. Hal can. Don't worry, we never sell, share, or solicit using your provided email address. PayPal will ensure that your valuable love offering goes directly to Dr. Hal. Links to submit questions and more can be found at our website, AskDrHalShow.com. Do not let this opportunity to consult a modern-day oracle, a seer for seers, a man steeped in the arts, sciences, and esoteric studies, pass you by. We present to you, through the very miracle of the internet itself, the one and only Dr. Hal Robins, now making house calls.
And we are back. Good evening, Dr. Hal.
Greetings and salutations.
Wow, we had a minor technical difficulty. For some reason, I had to log out of Twitch and sign back in again. But it took a minute, and luckily I had my phone here so I could do all the, cross-checking and all that stuff. So
It's always the devil that you don't know.
right? It's, something's going to go wrong. And, well, if that was the only thing that goes wrong tonight, we're still having a good show.
That's true, although I might say it is early yet. But we certainly started well with that cartoon. I enjoyed it greatly.
That is a hell of a cartoon. You'll notice there's only two of us this month, folks. Reverend Gofflin is in the audience, but she is off traveling this evening. Her and her partner are off doing book signings. A little more about that later on in the show. And but Reverend Gofflin, I hope you're having a safe trip, and I hope the fall foliage on the East Coast here is to your expectations. I do have some information about that cartoon, though, in Reverend Gofflin's absence.
Oh, that's good. We like to illuminate the things that we put up.
Let me go ahead. I've actually pre-recorded it just to make sure I got the information out properly. So let me push the button here.
Well, there you have it.
I have to say, I like the fact that we let that go just a little bit too long for that slap dance. That was something about it's just very disturbing.
See if there are any complaints that mention.
I hope we have complaints. That was obscene, that was rude, that was terrible, and children should never watch those things.
Oh, I don't know. Children are pretty tough, actually, where things like that come to mind.
It was the things my parents didn't know I read that saved my life. It wasn't the stuff they were handing me to read. I have questions, Dr. Hal. Would you?
That is excellent.
I'm watching the chat. I made Reverend Ramulak a birthday offer this month.
Oh, good.
That we gave him a free birthday question.
He's a friend of the show.
He is, and he's been very kind to the show. And I saw it was his birthday, and I didn't know what else to give him. So I gave him Dr. Hal. The gift of Dr. Hal. On that note, I do have questions. So let me go ahead and spin the wheels over here. Let me see what I got. We have a good queue shaping up, audience. Thank you very much.
Good.
We always have room for more. It's like Jell-O. We can answer as many questions as you come up with. So get them in the queue, and we'll read them. Not in the order that we get them. To prove that, let me scroll down here. Let me see if, I have one of our European sub-geniuses out in the audience. Pope Schmutz, good to see you, man.
Really?
Reverend Pope Schmutz is out in the audience tonight.
From the old country.
From, I believe, Germany. Pope Schmutz, tell me if I am wrong. But he says, Dear Dr. Hal, I would like to ask you out of personal necessity, what inspiration could be drawn from the wedding celebration of Bob and Connie? Was there anything that a willing Yeti descendant might try to emulate? With best wishes, Pope Schmutz. Oh, and fiancé Schmutz. Congratulations, Pope Schmutz.
Well, Pope Schmutz, I, Dr. Howland Owl, am actually a licensed minister, and so may anyone be who pays the Church of the Subgenius fee to be accredited and receives the membership packet. Not that being a subgenius enables you to perform legitimate marriages, but we are in an ecumenical relationship with the Universal Life Church of Modesto, California. At any rate, filling out the paperwork will indeed give you this ministerial position. But as a minister of the cloth of the Church of the Subgenius, I regularly find that no one wants the old standard marriage ceremony. People like to write their own vows and create their own ceremonies, making the minister only a nearby officiating presence. But there are those occasionally who want everything, the pipes and timbrels, the whistles, the drums, and the garlands. And in that instance, the marriage ceremony, so common in the past that the Church of England used to employ, does have the part where, if there be anyone at this ceremony who objects to why this man and woman should be joined in the union of holy matrimony, let him speak now or forever hold his peace. That's always the place for some joker to do something, which can be disruptive. This disruption can be headed off if you plan something in the nature of a little skit or a little disturbance. But if you control it, all is well, and it makes the ceremony that more memorable. And therefore, I would suggest that you take the reins firmly in hand and create not only the show itself, but the hecklers. Since you create them, they will not be able to do any harm, and indeed will add joy to what should, of course, be a joyful occasion.
Oh, and how I neglected to mention that was a $5 question.
Oh, very good. We appreciate that.
I have
Question sponsored with money on the show, because that ensures that people value them and are not simply throwing tropes at us that they are not concerned with. You are concerned with it in connection with how much you sponsor it with. And as you can probably read somewhere, robust sponsorship inculcates a robust response and a poetic recitation, just so that is understood. Who is next?
Let's see. You know what? I happened to catch this question from Reverend Gofflin when I stopped out onto one of the Discord channels today, but she has formally entered the question, so I will give you Reverend Gofflin's question next.
Very good. An inboard question. I assure you I have not encountered it.
Since she is currently on the East Coast experiencing the world in real time, as opposed to that Pacific Coast time that you experience.
Well, if anybody is going to download this thing and watch it, it's going to be Reverend Gofflin, so I'm not worried on that account.
Oh, you know, I need to mention something too about downloads and shows and all that stuff. Archive.org. We need to spend a minute and mention that.
All right.
They're in trouble.
Yes, I was hearing that the other night on the Reloadio show.
Yeah, they're coming back slow, but we might not have our show up on. We've been using that
Did
as our.
someone attack them?
Yes. Yes, unfortunately they
What
did.
did you know?
You know, because they can. I don't know why people do these things. It is outside of my understanding or my experience. It's
We work hard to achieve a flexible platform so we can bring you all the variety on this show. And it seemed that archive.org was the solution to some of our problems, but we may have to look yet farther afield.
Well, in the meantime, we are putting our show back up on YouTube again, except it doesn't have all the whistles and bells on it. We take the cartoons and all that stuff out of it because YouTube is such a stickler. You know, they're protecting their property, I understand, but their computers and their robots don't understand things like fair use and things of that nature. So we remove a lot of the material that we know is fair use and that we're using properly, but apparently YouTube does not. So, but what do you get? Well, you get all of the doctor. It's a solid probably a good 90 minutes of the doctor answering the questions that the audience have posed to him. So,
Well, I hope that's compensation.
but let me see. So back to Reverend Gofflin's question. Sorry about that. I digressed. This
That's
is
all
a
right.
this is a $9 question, Dr. Hal, and it is, dear
Right.
Dr. Hal, how do I calm my perpetually anxious mind on an upcoming long flight? Drugs, books, and in-flight entertainment don't seem to be cutting it.
Hmm. Well, those are the usual anodynes for a long flight. The only other recommendation I could make, if you don't care to watch the little screen in front of you or to read a book in which you are involved, is to be up all night before your flight. This often is what I end up doing. Not for this reason, but if you are exhausted and you fall asleep on the flight, well, then your problem is solved. You close your eyes, and when you wake up, you are circling your destination, or even at the moment where the landing gear bumps down on the runway. An abrupt but pleasant way to wake up from a deep and refreshing sleep during your travels.
Let's do one more question, Hal, and then we're going to go to
Very
our
good.
first monster movie moment. Audience, this is your chance. Get those questions in. We love to see those questions, and the doctor needs to bleed his brain off. If we cannot let pressure build up in Dr. Hal's brain, we have to.
Oh, thank you for worrying about that, but
It frightens me to know the amount of cranial pressure that builds up if you cannot get these questions out of your head. It just frightens me to know that, it's a ladies and gentlemen, you're performing a service to the community by getting your questions in. But let's get one
if you
more
remember.
to the good doctor. I have a $20 question, Dr. Hal.
All right.
This is from our very good friend Agrajag, and is the moon in the wrong place?
Um, I would answer that with no, Reverend Agrajag, because the moon is definitely in the right place for us. In fact, without a moon, we might not be here. Without our moon, since it is large in proportion to our planet. And as it orbits our Earth, it draws the tides and pulls gravitationally on us. And the reason it is so salutary for us in that case is that it keeps the waters of the earth from being a stagnant swamp with a greenhouse effect cover, which might raise the earth to an intolerable heat. Yes, the moon and its cycles just happen to be part of our setup. And if you want to find life like us in the universe, you'll need to find not only a planet like ours, but a planet with a large moon in an orbit similar to the orbit that our moon now inhabits. And besides, without it, we wouldn't have werewolves and many sentimental love songs. But I hope this is a pleasant answer for you. Here is a poem, The Haunted Palace. In the greenest of our valleys, by good angels tenanted, once a fair and stately palace, radiant palace, reared its head. In the monarch thought's dominion it stood there. Never seraph spread opinion over fabric half so fair. Banners yellow, glorious, golden, on its roof slid flat and flowed. All this, was in the olden time long ago, and every gentle air that dallied in that sweet day along the ramparts plumed and pallid, a winged odor went away. Wanderers in that happy valley, through two luminous windows, saw spirits moving musically to a lute's well-tuned law, round about a throne where sitting Porphyrogeny in state his glory well befitting, the ruler of the realm was seen. And all with pearl and ruby glowing was the fair palace door, through which came flowing, and sparkling evermore a troop of echoes, whose sweet duty was but to sing in voices of surpassing beauty the wit and wisdom of their king. But evil things in robes of sorrow assailed the monarch's high estate. Ah, let us mourn, for never morrow shall dawn upon him desolate, and round about his home the glory that blushed and bloomed is but a dim remembered story of the old time entombed. And travelers now, within that valley, through the red-litten windows see vast forms that move fantastically to a discordant melody, while, like a ghastly rapid river, through the pale door, a hideous throng rush out forever and laugh, but smile no more. Edgar Allan Poe. Thank you for your question.
Wonderful, Hal. And it is that season, isn't it? We've neglected to really
That's
mention
true.
that it's my favorite time of the year.
Yes, and mine too, but we do have a show heavy on the supernatural and the otherworldly, as is befitting.
Even when it isn't, it is. So, you know.
Well, of course, there is that.
You know. Anyway, Dr. Hal, we're going to go ahead and do our first monster movie moment, which is an interesting one. Not that we do uninteresting monster movie moments, but this one's kind of
Yes, we
special.
find them all interesting.
This one's kind of special. It has some history behind it. And so, audience, while you're watching this, do check your wallets and your hearts to see if there is a question that you need answering. Something that has been burning in your soul that you know Dr. Hal is the man with the answers. So, with that, here's the first monster movie moment. We have two tonight, and here's the first one.
And you can buy it also, but at the present time, for a price I consider prohibitive, although you get all sorts of extras in the package when you order the film. I want to wait until the price comes down, but we're happy to feature it here on Ask Dr. Hal.
It's an amazing piece of work, and I am glad they finished it. The animation in it is spectacular.
There's a similarity between a similar scene that David Allen animated for When Dinosaurs Ruled the Earth, where the Chasmosaurus attacks and kills a friend of his. And then there's a long tracking shot as it rushes up an incline, just the way the Yeti does here. And the sequence concludes with an anguished human face in mourning, just as it does here. So that similarity certainly puts itself forward.
You know, while we were editing this, we realized Juliet Mills is in that. We knew Juliet Mills was in it, but we realized that a good alternate title for this was Nanny is the Professor.
Well, in this case, she is, and they have good scenes in the museum showing the taxidermic mount of Yeti and also the articulated skeleton of the Yeti. What museum wouldn't want those things?
And I have to admit too, I saw this, and it was released last year, and I'm like, oh my God, Juliet Mills, she's got to be 91. She's gorgeous. Well, that was 30 years ago, so I'm sure she's still gorgeous. But it was like, oh my God, who's her doctor? Wow.
Those trips to Tibet must have agreed with her.
Yeah, no kidding. Anyway, I have a question here from our good friend Reverend Ramulak. He got
All
us his
right.
question, and then
Very good.
our good friend Saint Joyce, our stage ghost, got it to me. So the system works. My question to Dr. Hal. I have agreed to work tonight even though it is my day off. This voluntarily giving my slack away is heretical to subgenius doctrine, yet it allows me more dollars, which Bob approves of. How do I cope with this conflict of spiritual interest?
Well, Reverend Remulak, according to us, you're doing the right thing. And there is less conflict than you might suppose, because slack is not a constant flow in a never-ending torrent or stream, except for the world's most slackless man, J.R. Bob Dobbs himself. The rest of us only have a certain amount of slack, and thus we must arrange it to suit ourselves. We must ration it. And if by finding employment, which in itself is not initially slackful, you can increase your charge or your backload of slack, then you can arrange it even better to suit your own convenience. Remember, you don't get slack from anyone but yourself. And that is the difference between false slack that the conspiracy offers and the true slack, which is the birthright of every subgenius. But thank you for your question.
And happy birthday, Ramulak.
Yes, thank you. And we gave him that as a sponsored question for his birthday.
Yes. Consider it a $5 question, Dr. Hal.
Sure.
Yes, that will be your birthday gift from the Pressures. It's like getting that crisp $5 bill on your birthday card from your aunt and uncle. You know,
not everyone would get
that. Should never
gift.
Stop happening.
Yes.
You know, speaking of our friends over the Great Puddle, we have another person here, our Griffin, who is just a madman. Always good to see him. It's a $7 question, and it says, should I be more scared of the conspiracy or worried about what is controlling me from the inside?
Well, if it's from the inside, Reverend Griffin, then it is a part of you that is operating these controls. But the conspiracy would be externally operating you. And thus you would lose the autonomy, which I think all of us prize. I would suggest, although many of us are essentially multiple personalities or contain multitudes in the famous phrase, that you trust that which is internal and question that which is external, although from either direction can come something you accept or prudently choose to reject.
Dr. Hal? Let me see. How about Dr. Billy next? It's a $15 question.
Dr. Billy, great.
Dr. Billy himself, the man with the music. We're going to see Dr. Billy here in one of our bits later on in the show. So so stand by. He will be along.
Well,
shortly.
I look forward to that.
Me too. Anyway, his question is a $15 question. It is, Dr. Hal, what do pinks think about?
Well, that's a very good question, Dr. Billy. And it's always somewhat prepossessing or presumptuous to say what other people are thinking. How can you truly know? And yet there are some things we do know in the Church of the Subgenius. I'm going to give you my particular thought on this matter. What are they thinking about? What do people generally think about? And what is the purpose of this thinking that they do? It has an ostensible pragmatic purpose. You're thinking about how to solve a problem. Yes, but what does solving a problem mean as far as the result is concerned? It may make it possible for you to go on, but to what end? In fact, a curious paradox lies at the point of this conundrum, and that is that the purpose of thinking is so that you don't have to think. The pinks especially epitomize this. You see, you are bothered by something, and so by the process of thinking, by the process of thought, you render it not troubling to you by solving the problem or by ignoring it. But you have to make the mental effort. The purpose of thinking is not to have to think, just as the purpose of drinking is not to have to drink. Once you drink, you have quenched your thirst, and you are not thirsty and do not have to think to drink. And once you have thought, you have thought out the problem. And so do not fear it. In fact, go farther into it, because you have a special ally, all the rest of your brain, aside from your point of consciousness, which is there calculating in your favor, which loves you and wants to help you. Be under the dominion of your own spirit or genius. That is to say, be a sub-genius. Sub under genius, spirit, under your own spirit, and not under the cant, the memes, and the clatter of the false slack offered by the conspiracy surrounding us. Did you say that was, pardon me, a $15 question?
I did indeed. $15 question, Dr. Hal.
This poem is called Vampires. Vampires are such fragile creatures. We dread the dark, but the light destroys them. Sunlight or a stake or a cross, such common things. Still, late at night, when the bat-like vampire sings, we shrink from his voice. Centuries have taught us, in shadows, danger lurks for those who stray, and there the vampire bares his yellow fangs and feels the ancient soul tormenting pangs. He has no choice. We are his prey, plump and fragrant, and if we pray to avoid him, the more he prays to find us, prays to some despotic hooded god whose benediction is the humid blood he lusts to taste. Michael R. Birch.
Plump and fragrant.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, well, they have good senses of smell.
You know, the next time I go to Walmart, those words are going to echo in my brain.
As you see, the shoppers also plump and fragrant.
Plump and fragrant, yeah. So sorry, audience. That's not funny.
Yeah, well, it could be.
Pardon me. Pardon me, audience. I didn't have a chance to mute my microphone there. So, we have we have a guest spot coming up.
Oh, very good.
We have Dust Bowl Faeries this month again, which, oh my God, they're amazing.
We like them.
Oh, they're... I might get a chance to meet them next month, or at least a couple members of the band, so I'm going to make sure I've got
How
some...
is that? How do you do that?
There's a person up that way that's having a birthday party, and some of the members of that band are going to be at the birthday party.
All right, very good.
So we're going to load them up with some Dr. House swag and bribe them to make more of these videos. because
Give them one of those
Yeah.
cups that we give people who participate on the show.
yes, I have to do a run of those here soon. We do those in our basement. Great, good fun. We also started. I got a little, Nenslow. Nenslow got himself a heat printer, a thermal printer, and I tried my hand at printing out some stickers on it, and it works.
And they look very sharp.
It works it works pretty good, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes. Who wouldn't want a sticker that says hundreds of severed heads on it?
Except if you put it on your car in the summertime, because they're thermal, they'll turn black. So, but they're great for putting on meat if you want to put them like in the freezer. You can always put these, stickers on them. But we have a presentation coming up next. Audience, do get your questions into the good doctor. We have lots of room. We can answer any question that you might have this evening. Dr. Hal, before we go, anything?
No, I believe I'm quite as anxious to see the Dust Bowl Faeries as you are.
Oh, and following the Dust Bowl Faeries, there is another short presentation that we're doing. So you'll hear my voice again in that one. So
yes,
here it comes.
The
Audience, get those questions in.
one.
Here's a little party trick that some folks I've known have taken rather seriously. This trick, known in some circles as torching, uses only a certain kind of flashlight and some help from natural physics. The flashlight is adjusted carefully so that it reaches a border between off and on, being neither alive nor dead. Over a short period, if adjusted correctly, the flashlight will start to blink at random intervals. There it is. That's the trick. Spooky, huh? Did I mention the patter? This is the thing that makes the trick work. The setup for this is that you are going to use this simple flashlight to see if there are any entities in the room that might want to communicate with us. Technobabble works exceptionally well here. It sounds science-y, and who in the world wants to fact-check these days? Then, no matter what happens, the answer is always entity. The experiment is never a failure, even when no results are obtained or the information makes no sense. It is left only to the audience's need to believe in a spirit world that makes the trick so effective for some. So, allow me to demonstrate. Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues and guests, I present to you today a modern marvel and a secret that the scientific community has kept from you. It is an experiment using simple tools that proves beyond average doubt the existence of the presence of unseen intelligences all around us. This experiment uses only a light source that has been adjusted to what is called a Schrödinger state. In this state, we form a medium whereby these unseen entities are able to change the quantum state of the light source from off to on. The light source will respond with a clear invitation if an entity is present who wants to communicate. Sometimes they are shy, and it may take a while. If they've been made to feel slighted, they may be outright difficult, so do try to present an open mind. Rest assured that even though this all sounds too good to be true, it is. They're here. If there are any entities present who would care to speak with us, they are welcome to do so now. I will communicate with simple yes or no questions, and you will blink the light, once for yes, twice for no. Do you understand? Are you friendly? Are you unfriendly? Looks like we might have more than one entity here. Is there more than one entity here? Usually, when we get strange answers like this, it's a child entity who is playing with us. Do you want to play? They must not have heard the question. Let me repeat it. Do you want to play? And so on. You get the idea. I sped the responses up a bit since, be warned, if you try this at home, it can get a bit boring after a few minutes. What is happening with the flashlight is that the contacts move very slightly, expanding and contracting in response to temperature fluctuations as air currents in the room circulate. The rest is suggestion. Now sleep.
And that's torching.
Torching. Words cannot begin to express the hours that I have wasted watching people do that.
Well, one must be rigorous in one's approach to esoteric subjects. This is an example of that necessary rigor.
One should be rigorous. I just wish some were. I believe St. Joyce and I worked with a ghost hunting group for about 2.5 years. And everything they did was a ghost. No matter what happened, no matter, it was always, the explanation was always a ghost. Even when there was no ghost, the explanation was a ghost. It was, they're just not willing to talk to us tonight.
The voluntary credulity.
And, well, yeah, and I mean, it's, and we appreciate the, I guess the need to believe, but it was still fascinating to watch this group kind of work themselves into a frenzy. The whole time, I think, being taken advantage of by the person who was filming a lot of this. I think he was trying to work everyone up into a frenzy so he would get good video.
Yeah, so we'd have a film that was worth watching.
So my job is to work you up into a frenzy with these questions. We try to achieve the same effect. I don't know if it works.
You could call it that. It depends on the question.
Your frenzy state often looks like your calm state, but I know deep down inside you're a hamster on a wheel.
Well, are not we all, as
right?
We drive, gain our objective.
But I have questions for you, and I have one here. This looks like a good one to start the scene off with. This is from Dr. Snow. It is a $9 question. Why is the turtle sad?
Well, turtles go through a range of emotions, and we know this because in recent times, turtles have been found to possess great intelligence, more than they were credited with before. And therefore, if the turtle is able to possess intellection, then the turtle can review and find the states of contentment and its opposite, discontent, unhappiness. And since a turtle should be expected to be a realist, that is why, in this instance, it may be sad. Of course, we are speaking of the aquatic testudinate, the turtle, rather than the land one, which is the tortoise. But I believe it applies across the board to the entire spectrum. And once again, I will mention that my eyes were opened by a video that's been around for years now on the internet. Anyone can find it, of a man whose pet turtle or tortoise and dog are playing in the backyard with each other. Once you see that turtle scrambling with its little legs to push the ball with its head and to play back and forth with the puppy, you'll realize that this is an intelligent being. I have a friend in Arizona who has a large tortoise living in his side yard, and it estivates during the winter, but in the summer it comes out and makes its wishes known. There is no question that this turtle, or tortoise, as the case may be, is gaming the system in its own way. Still, one can't expect any creature to be happy at all times, and therefore it possesses the quality of sadness, which make the quality of happiness that it possesses all the more rare, valuable, and, as we subgeniuses would say, slackful.
Very good, Dr. Hal. I have a question here from our very good friend Reverend Xenofact, who we're also going to see here in just a few minutes, actually.
Yes.
Reverend Billy, Professor Gofflin, and Reverend Xenofax all in the same room together with a whole new subject that we're bringing up this show.
You mean in the same chat room, the same video room?
Well, yeah, it's all relative.
Yes.
It's funny, you know, some of these folks I've only met them in chat rooms. Dr. Billy being one of them, and then Dr. Billy.
You met him at Starwood.
We did in fact.
We were together at Starwood.
But it was weird because it didn't feel like I was meeting him in person for the first time. It felt like, oh well, it's Billy. You know, I've known Billy for a few years now. So it's an odd medium. I think some of the contacts that we make on this are real. Very interesting. But I have a question here from our good friend Reverend Xenofact. It is a $15 question. And
very good.
Which art movement is most important to subgenius history? Dada, the Surrealist movement that followed, both, or neither?
Dada was a great movement in its time, and so is the Surreal movement. And they do partake of each other. However, they are not as forceful as they once were because the world has grown to accommodate them. And at one time, they were antithetical to the current state of intellection and understanding. They were a rejection of moving in the direction of the Western Enlightenment and looking for it in impulses and in other ways. And they were greatly effective. And therefore, society and the human creation, which some refer to as the noosphere, have accommodated themselves to all of the directions and influences of these two art movements. And yet they still stand as fundamental and monumental to our understanding, particularly in the Church of the Subgenius, because there's always more to be mined from that vein, despite the superficial resemblance of the external world. In the case of this art, it is the thing itself, the true, the blushful Hippocrene.
Well, that was a $15 question. Did you want to give a recitation on that?
Of course I did. I was still thinking about the question.
Oh.
Here's a poem. Little Orphaned Annie. Little orphaned Annies come to our house to stay, to wash the cups and saucers up and sweep the crumbs away, and chew the chickens off the porch, and dust the hearth, and sweep, and make the fire, and bake the bread, and earn her board and keep. But all us other chillun, when the supper things is done, we sits around the kitchen fire and has the mostest fun a listening to the witch tales that Annie tells about, and the goblins that gets you if you don't watch out. And once there was a little boy who wouldn't say his prayers. And when he went to bed at night, away upstairs, his mammy heard him holler, and his daddy heard him bawl, and when they turned the kivers down, he wasn't there at all. And they seeked him in the rafter room, the cubby hole and press. They seeked him up the chimbley flue and everywheres, I guess, but all they ever found was just his pants and roundabout, and the goblins will get you if you don't watch out. And once there was a little girl who used to laugh and grin, make fun of everybody and all her blood and kin. And once when they was company and old folks was there, she mocked 'em and she shocked 'em and she said she didn't care. And then, just as she kicked her heels and turned to run and hide, there was two great big black things a-standing at her side, and they snatched her through the ceiling, for she knowed what she's about, and the goblins will get you if you don't watch out. And little orphan Danny says that when the blaze is blue, and the lamplight flickers, and the wind goes whoo, and you hear the crickets quit, and the sky is gray, and the lightning, bugs, and dew is all quenched away. You better mind your parents and your teachers fond and dear, and cherish them what loves you, and dry the orphan's tear, and help the poor and needy ones that clusters all about, or the goblins will get you if you don't watch out. James Whitcomb Riley.
I love that poem. We have a Popus Lil is in the audience tonight.
Oh, great.
Among other people, but we don't see Popus Lil too often.
Perhaps she will join us in the chat room afterwards.
Perhaps so. I'm going to put that link out to the audience here shortly. And also Shining Path of Least Resistance popped in, which is always
Excellent.
Wonderful to see Shining Path. So welcome all. And everyone else, of course. You know, we're not shunning anyone.
I hope not.
Reverend Stang is out there. Hello, Reverend Stang.
Oh, good.
Let me see. I have a question here. What do I want to give you next? How about another $15 question, Dr. Hal, from
Very good.
Another good friend of the show, Mob Miati.
Excellent.
Another short question. Is nothing sacred?
Well, I would say yes, nothing is sacred, because it is the field on which being exists, on which something exists. Without nothing, there can be no something. Although when there is something, nothing is not always easy to find. But the blank spot demands to be filled in. And so nothing can be sacred because it can be real estate on which palaces, pavilions, monuments can be erected, entire ideologies, religions, species of thought. One has to have a mystic place to stand, as Archimedes postulated when he supposedly said, "Give me a place to stand and I can move the world," speaking of the discovery of the Archimedean leverage principle. So remember, nothing is nothing to condemn, but something to applaud and appreciate. El Dorado. Gaily bedight, a gallant knight in sunshine and in shadow, had ridden long, singing a song in search of El Dorado. But he grew old, this night so bold, and o'er his heart a shadow fell as he found no spot of ground that looked like El Dorado. And as his strength failed him at length, he met a pilgrim shadow. Shadow, said he, where can it be, this land of El Dorado? Over the mountains of the moon, down the valley of the shadow. Ride, boldly ride, the shade replied, if ye would seek El Dorado. Edgar Allan Poe.
Well, Dr. Hal, let's give the audience a chance for their brains to cool down a little bit and see if they can shake some questions out for us. We have plenty of time. We're happy to answer your questions.
Right.
But in the meantime, we have a brand new feature that we're trying out. We're hoping this is going to be a regular feature, and it's called Odd on the March. So, for your viewing pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, friends, guests, and colleagues, I will leave it to you to watch this and think of questions. Please get them into our queue. We want to see as many questions come in tonight as we can possibly see. So, with that, here comes Odd on the March.
Odd on the March, a Subgenius newsreel production for October 2024.
Welcome, dear audience, to this, our inaugural episode of Odd on the March, your premier place for all that is odd on the web and the world at large. That's right, we have scoured the entire planet Earth, nay, the solar system, to bring you the very finest in oddities from books, media, movies, zines, current events, and much, much more. I am your host, Professor Gofflin, and joining me today we have Reverend Dr. Billy and Reverend Xenofact. Greetings, fellow oddity enthusiasts. How are we all doing today?
Oh, great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, happy to have you. Thanks for joining us. Xenofact, how are you doing?
Doing fantastic. Looking forward to sharing with our audience.
Excellent. Well, I think they're going to be in for a treat. We have truly dug up some choice oddities this month. And in fact, let's go ahead and just get started. Dr. Billy, I think you found a publication that might be of interest to our audience.
It is. I think people who enjoy comics and underground, stuff like that, will really enjoy it. And if we're ready, I can certainly tell you about it.
Take it away, Dr. Billy.
Okay. Dummy Magazine is dedicated to alternative and underground comics, art, and design. Issue number 1, The Art of Pee-wee's Playhouse, pulls the curtain back on the only children's program in history to beam the visage of J.R. Bob Dobbs into the minds of millions of children every Saturday morning, doing untold good. Gary Panter, Mark Newgarden, Kaz, and other show creators provide a fascinating history of Playhouse set and puppet designs, along with numerous illustrations and sketches. Dummy issue number 2 features the epic saga of the comic Air Pirates Funnies, which in its 1971 two-issue run incurred the wrath of Disney, resulting in years of litigation regarding parody and usage due to its brazen and very funny depictions of Disney and other classic comic characters. Air Pirates creators Dan O'Neill, Bobby London, Sherry Flanagan, and others provide their perspective on this legendary tale. Other cool stuff in issue 2 include a look at Disney-themed Tijuana Bibles and the infamous Wallywood Disneyland Memorial Orgy poster, No Home Should Be Without. Dummy publisher John Kelly also tells us that he's hoping to publish an issue on the art of the subgenius, so that would be something we would all look forward to. Both issues are available at dummyzine.com.
Wow, that sounds fabulous. I'm actually I have dummy issue number 1, which I purchased at your recommendation, Billy, and it really is a nice collection of stuff. I mean, it's not only just an interesting selection of information, but the way it's formatted is so beautiful. It's like it's a nice art piece to have in addition to just being informative.
Right.
Mm.
It's well worth pursuing. And the second issue, I think, is going to be even bigger and chock full of just really interesting stuff, especially to those of us who enjoy the underground comics from
Yeah.
the 70s.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's got some interesting characters kind of wound up in that story. So yeah,
Sounds like something I'll have to purchase.
yeah, definitely looking forward to that. Well, that sounds lovely. Well, not to be outdone, Reverend Xenofact, you have also found us something from the world of publication. This is a historical art book. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'd like to talk about the Book of Miracles, sometimes called the Augsburg Book of Miracles, after the city it was published in. This is a reproduction of a 16th century collection of full color illustrations of miracles from biblical times through the era it was created onto the Book of Revelations. And it won't surprise anyone that Taschen has a multi-language release of this if you have a spare $50 and want to blow your mind. Though, to be honest, I have a copy, and $50 is amazingly cheap. This book was put together in Germany somewhere around 1545, because at that age, there was a real interest in folios, books, and broadsheets about miracles and occurrences. And this book, whoever created it, probably a father-son team of illustrators, from what we can tell. So it's kind of in search of and mixed with Ripley's Believe It or Not, with a religious bent, put together by a father-son team. That sounds weird enough, but what's amazing, one of the things amazing, it's got a chronology. It starts with the Bible, goes to the apocalypse, passes through Europe, and pretty much sends the end times are upon us message, using a lot of events that people at the time would have heard of. I once heard it called Christian cosmic horror. The other thing is, it's easy to dismiss some of the contents, because when someone reports a bunch of phantom infant sword fighting in the sky, you're more ready to kind of have the person take a blood test. But there's also a lot of natural history. When you look at the illustrations, there are cases of sundogs, comets, and more. And even though it's fanciful in some ways, there's also elements that are really historic, from what is possibly the first record of a bolide to clear misinterpretations of natural phenomena. So one moment you're dealing with somebody talking about comets with arms carrying swords, and the next moment you're looking at what's clearly a case of rare weather. If you're a scholar of religious history and art, or if you're an artist looking for some truly wild inspiration without a bunch of illegal substances, this book is your buy, if you can handle the price tag. The standard of the book is great, but admit if you don't, you can find most of the folio on the web in pieces if you look for Book of Miracles. But honestly, it's amazing. And it also wouldn't make a bad gift for someone into this kind of thing, which, judging by our audience, is everyone listening to this.
I should think so, yeah.
I have a copy, and it's amazing. It's already turned into some of my strange art people have seen, and I'm still getting ideas from it.
Oh, that's fabulous. Yeah, I'm not allowed into the Taschen bookstore anymore, unsupervised. This last time I ran up quite the tab.
I didn't know there was a Taschen bookstore.
Yeah, if you ever come to LA.
I should not be allowed there either.
No, I ran up quite the tab. But everything they do is just such a nice presentation. It's definitely worth the price, which is not as high as it could be, I feel like.
Oh no. This book, honestly, I was amazed how cheap it was. It even has it's in 3 languages, and it contains some extensive historical notes going at everything from natural phenomena to Catholic versus Protestant conflict. Somebody had a ball writing this thing.
I would urge all our viewers to, if you don't know about Taschen, to check them out at their website, because it's extraordinary the depth of material that they publish, and the quality of what they put out is extraordinary.
Just beautiful. Yeah, absolutely gorgeous. Excellent. Well, thank you, Xenofact.
Well, buy something after you join or donate to the Church of the Subgenius.
Exactly. Priorities, people. We got to keep this in.
Bob secretly runs Taschen, from what I can tell.
Yeah.
It's possible. Very
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, fabulous. Well, that is a good thing to know about. Thank you for that, Reverend Xenofact. Well, last but not least, dear viewers, I am going to bring you word of the 45th Occasional Pasadena Doodah Parade. So, as the name implies, the parade is in its 45th non-consecutive year as it was put on hold for a while during the height of COVID, but it is back better than ever with a new, more prominent parade route through the prime shopping district of Old Town Pasadena, California. So, conceived in 1978 as an alternative answer to the famed Pasadena Rose Parade, it exists as a flamboyant counterpart to that far more gilded institution. Like the Rose Parade, the Doodah Parade yearly appoints a grand marshal, crowns a Doodah queen, etc., though the similarities pretty much end there. The Pasadena Doodah Parade is populated by a variety of art cars, marching bands, dance troupes, costumed oddballs of all shapes and sizes, you name it. Traditionally, tortillas are launched by the hundreds, frisbee-like, at the marchers as they make their way down Colorado Boulevard. Past marchers have included the Radioactive Chicken Heads, Uncle Fester, the Loch Ness Bagpipe Band, and a dozen or so assorted belly dancers. Now, this is all very weird and wonderful, but why am I telling you, our discerning audience, about the Doodah Parade? Well, I am pleased to inform you that our very own Church of the Subgenius, praise Bob, has a yearly presence in the parade, and you can be a participant. The Subgenius End Times Procession crew, headed up by Hellswami Satellite Weavers, exists to perplex, terrify, and perhaps even intrigue both pinks and abnormals alike. Pictured here, you can see 2023's procession, which, while formidable, could certainly expand to include multitudes of subgenii. So if you happen to find yourself in the Pasadena, California area on November 24th, 2024, and you would like to join your superior Yeti kin in this endeavor, you can join the Subgenius End Times Procession Crew's public Facebook group, or reach out to the organizer, John Hagenbrenner, also on Facebook. Join us, won't you?
Wow, that sounds like a good time.
It is a good time. I marched in last year's parade. We had barely enough people to manage all of the banners, so please, I beg you, if you're in the Southern California area, please help us put on the largest, most bizarre production possible. We would really gratefully accept your help.
Oh, it sounds like a worthy cause for us if we're able to
Yeah.
get down there.
Absolutely, yeah. It definitely terrified a few normals. And I think I still have a marshmallow on the bottom of my shoe somewhere, so.
They knew what they were getting into.
I think they might have, yeah. But the Doodah Parade's a great outlet for the Subgenius because it's already such an irreverent kind of, it's thumbing the nose at the Rose Parade a bit, which is already kind of up our alley. So I think yeah, it's a real good time, and it's a good chance to, mingle with your fellow Subgenii and, get to meet some of the luminaries of the church. So yeah, please join us. We would love to see you. All right, well, I think that about wraps it up for this episode. Thank you guys for joining me so much, Dr. Billy, Reverend Xenofact, a pleasure as always. Audience, we will see you again next month with even more news of the weird. And in the meantime, you can view show notes, web links to our topics for this month, and recordings of this and future episodes at oddonthemarch.com. Ad insolitus.
Ad insolitus.
Ad insolitus.
Most illuminating.
And at oddonthemarch.com, you will find a very skeletal website right now. Just the links are currently there, but
Seasonally appropriate.
Oh, there's more on the way. It's coming.
I ordered the Book of Miracles. It should come on Tuesday because that recommendation seemed so helpful.
Awesome. Well, I have some questions here. Chris Lee, of all people, looks like he's in the audience.
A well-known subgenius.
It is a $9 question. Yes, and I have not seen Chris in years. Chris, welcome to the Ask Dr. Hal Show Home Edition.
Yes, welcome.
It is a $9 question, and what is the best soup? Second and third.
That's a good one. But of course, it's entirely subjective. My tastes cannot be made to stand for everyone's taste. But what does one look for in this wonderful, sustaining food of soup? One looks for heat. One looks to assume the qi energy that Chinese apothecary science is all about. And of course, there's also the value of chicken soup for the soul in the Hebraic tradition. The chicken soup will coat the alimentary tract and provide a feeling of well-being, which is necessary for salutary purposes. And there are many different varieties of chicken soup as well as other soups. Then there is the soup that Thai restaurants provide with coconut milk in it, an exquisite type of soup. That has to go into it also. Now, what are we doing? Are we doing ranked choice voting or something? What is the first, second, and third most delicious and lovely type of soup? Did I misunderstand the question, or is that what we have?
The question again, let me scroll back to it. I was rolling through the question. Oh, let me see. Yes, what is the best soup, second and third? So here your three choices for best soups.
Choice voting. Yes, we just had that in our election here in California. You get to vote for more than one person, but in order of preference. And in voting for the soup, I would start with hot and sour soup, the Chinese soup. Then I would say the other soup that I mentioned, the Thai coconut soup. And then in the broad third category, all Western soup, chicken soup, though that could include the Chinese wonton soup, a chicken wonton, which takes a little bit from both camps. But the third type generally is stews. Stews can include beef stew. They can include chili. They tend to be the hearty type of soup, if you know what I mean, while the other kinds concentrate on flavor. To soup can be added wine and other things to create a particular preference that you may not be able to find anywhere unless you make it yourself. But those are my preferences, and they may be other people's preferences, since I'm speaking not just of specific soups, but of entire categories of soups.
You listed all my favorites.
Do you suppose that he will cook some soup tonight as a result of this line of question?
He may not, but I might.
Those Oriental soups do take some finesse to create, but the stew is great because you could add things to it and customize it while creating it. But as they say, soup is good food.
Hot and sour soup is the yardstick that I use for a Chinese restaurant. I get their hot and sour soup.
It is excellent, isn't it? But Chinese soup also contains egg flour soup. There are many different varieties. Corn and crab meat, for example. You'd have to go to a Chinese food each night a week to try all the soups available. And what a worthy project that would be.
You are quite fortunate in your neck of the woods that your exposure to Asian food is pretty spectacular.
Well, I make no claims not to say that that's where my allegiance lies, soup-wise.
Let me see. I've got another question here for you from Reverend Dr. Les. It is a $12 question. And
Mm-hmm.
it is something we all want to know. Any good last-minute Halloween costume ideas?
Well, do you want to have a spectacular costume more than you want to be comfortable on Halloween? Because ideally, you want to be comfortable in your Halloween costume, yet some require a certain distortion in order to hit the mark. When I was a kid, I was tricked out with a special costume where they made a set of false shoulders out of a detergent box, and a coat goes on over that. The arms of the coat are stuffed with newspaper, gloves on the ends. The result is that you're a headless person, you see, and yet quite a nuisance in not really being able to take it off and dislodge it without spoiling the whole thing. Anyway, there are a lot of good ones now. Online, there's a wonderful skull mask being advertised, which really looks like a human skull. It has a movable lower jaw that moves when your jaw moves, and if you put black cloth under it and wear black, it appears to be an actual anatomical skull floating without support on your shoulders. Quite disquieting. Others go for the sexy witch and other things like that. Halloween costumes have to be customized. There are two things that you want to do. You want to be comfortable and you want to have a remarkable costume. You may have to subtract one from the other to a certain degree to achieve just what you like. Of course, you don't want to be offensive and wear a Ku Klux Klan hood or a Nazi uniform or something like that, as some mistakenly have done. You could consult the history books and make up a uniform from any of the sad military adventures that our species have had. But I would say that the supernatural impersonation is always the most seasonally appropriate. If you can still get one of those skull masks at this late date, I'd recommend that you get that and accessorize.
Dr. Hal, I have a $23 question here from
wonderful.
OK Bob OK.
Interesting. I'm not sure we've heard from that person before.
It is a brand new person, or at least their name is. Could be someone we've met before, but one never knows in this medium. The question is, T. Leary reported a Captain Clark experience, a 23 related phenomena, followed up by R.A. Wilson. Any hindsight on this? Also, please indulge insight on current Arnold Palmer's daughter effect on the fortitude of the bleeding head of Arnold Palmer. With all due respect, I.
All right, those two things are probably linked by tenuous strands, one way or the other. I might have to request, if I get too far afield as I am weaving, as the expression is, maybe you can bring me back to earth in that case. In fact, perhaps you should tell me the first part once again.
T. Leary reported a Captain Clark experience, a 23 related phenomena, followed up
now
by...
I can do it. Thank you. Thank you. The number 23. You know, I'll tell you this. When I met Tim Leary, he was quite interested in me only after somebody told him that I was involved with the Church of the Subgenius. Leary was quite interested in the church? Well, the number 23 has a numerological significance, and many have embraced it. Many have gone wholeheartedly for it. There's someone here in the arts scene called Steve 23, for example. And the number 23 has been celebrated by Wilson and others. One might be tempted to think that this is an arbitrary choice, and yet the name 20 is of significance, meaning something twice as far out as we would normally be dealing with, as in the 20,000 leagues under the sea, or the beast from 20,000 fathoms, and so forth. In this case, or the movie 20 Million Miles to Earth, and except for 20 million miles to Earth, these are not measures of depth, but of distance, of a distance that is traveled under the sea, or in the case of 20 million miles to Earth, in space. But I was sure I had a bridge to the second part of the question, but again, I'm going to have to ask if you will repeat that.
Sure, Dr. Hal. Give me just a second. I'll get back to that question.
The second part.
You got it. Okay, let me see. Also, please indulge insight on current Arnold Palmer's daughter effect
yes.
on the fortitude of the bleeding head of Arnold Palmer. With all due respect, aye.
Well, the bleeding head of Arnold Palmer is bloody but not unbowed, in the famous phrase. Arnold Palmer was aware of the subcult within the Church of the Subgenius concerning the bleeding head of Mr. Palmer, at one time the World Cup golfer. He was not pleased by it, but he was often twitted about it by his fellow golfers, particularly the fractious Lee Trevino. But just recently, Arnold Palmer has popped up from the grave again, because in Donald Trump's ravings, and this is no older than today, Mr. Trump started going off during one of his rants about how physically impressive Arnold Palmer was when standing naked in the shower. Apparently, the genitalia of Arnold Palmer are now part of the endless political chatter which we are forced to listen to at this stressful time. But this cannot be an accident. To subgeniuses and other fervent believers, there are no accidents, but only coincidences, which mean that two things occur at the same time. In this case, the resurgence of the concept of Arnold Palmer at his massive golf club, and the suffering that even the greatest athlete must make surreptitiously. We have no one being tortured on a wooden cross in our church, but we do believe that it is so important to get slack by having fun that one must even punish one's self to a certain degree to achieve it. Where this balance lies, it is up to the individual to decide, and not for anyone else, even such a far-seeing organization as the Church of the Subgenius. We and the dead ride quick at night. When the home is no more, when the mother's negative light goes also, when solitude rips the door from frame, when the transitory moves into the familial, then I often think of the drink, the notes, the contented and badly drawn cartographies on my bare face that reflects the dance of mapping out the fight. A marriage in mutilated shelter, to live like an animal just for a moment without fear, or only a constant panic without distinction. a confrontational frenzy calmly composed, the way an evil might compose a coupling. My bare face exposed with its bright blood. All else melts into the plastic father with his plastic horses in a plastic rodeo, all awash in criminal seductions and an urbane consumption. I am a purple worm beneath your boot, like my 1,000 ancestors, turning away. But this new Helen of Troy has messianic ways, waking as she does in pain, letting the mice dance on with their little distorted faces, and the money beneath their feet aflame and falling onto the criminal's halo. The implication being that the thing cannot and should not change, that the saint holds her hair indecently with the kind of pride inbuilt and structured, the eighth deadly sin unknown till now, until we knew what to do with the approbation of devils, heathens, clowns, and the formal compositions thundering against us. We took an eye from the shelf and slapped it onto the face. We took unconstituted topographies, and they quickly became the malefactor's apotheosis, a smiling Lucifer, recalcitrant, if viewed from above. J.M. Rivera. Thank you for your question, which suggested that particular poem.
Beautiful, Hal. Thank you. I have I think I don't get a price in this one. It's a $13 question from another new questioner, Resistance International.
Very good.
And let me open it up here. Greetings, Dr. Hal. How many wooks would a woke wook wake if a woke wook would wake wooks? Or, in other words, any advice for a hippie on the Bodhisattva path? Peace, love, and surf, Sir Doc Bunsen and Resistance International. I thought I was going to get through that whole thing without stuttering my words. Gosh darn it.
Well, Bodhisattva, that could throw anybody, but how many wooks would a woke wook wake? Was that the beginning of it?
I'd love to say that again.
Please, why don't you? Let me make sure that I understand it correctly.
How many wooks would a woke wook wake if a woke wook would wake wooks?
Gotcha. Well, what are wooks, first of all? I am inevitably reminded of those hairy beings in the Star Wars universe, the Wookiees. Chewbacca, the space pilot who is a friend of Han Solo, is one of these. And so successful was his appearance in the first Star Wars movie that they originally conceived in a future movie a visit to the planet of Wookiees. But this proved difficult to do. And in fact, what they ended up was a revision of the idea where you had Ewoks, which is Wookiees backwards, and are not big and furry, but small and furry. The wisdom of this is still to be debated. But how many wooks would a woke wook wake if a woke wook could wake wooks? As many as possible in the community of Wookiees. Why? Because it is necessary to be awake, to wake from the sleep of ignorance and incomprehension. What the word woke signifies is that one is awake to injustices and things which have gone by the board and are accepted when there is no reason to accept them except an unpleasant and heavy custom which rests upon us all. But a new idea from one who has been wakened or woke is a megaphone to wake the others. And it is believed by those who have achieved this state that it is proper, noble, and beneficent to make that clarion call, to wake the others from their sleep so that all can be equally awake, even if you're 7 feet tall, have a shiny black nose, and are covered with long, stringy hairs.
I looked up a wook, and apparently
Yes.
it is an aficionado of music festivals.
Oh, well, that changes it. But not that much, because if you wish to wake the others at the music festival, it's for the same reason. Are you just there to chew your gum and listen to the music, or does the music have a specific cultural effect which you want the others to be sensitive to? So one could wake as many wooks as in earshot in this latter case.
I should probably mention too that before anybody shouts out the window, "Hey, all you wooks," I did have some indications that it might be something of a derogatory term. So just be
Well, all
aware.
terms for others are
Well, right.
derogatory,
Right.
potentially, because they're being separated from the clade of the person who offers them. $13, you say.
Yeah.
This is by Dylan Thomas. The force that through the green fuse drives the flower, drives my green age, that blasts the roots of trees, is my destroyer. And I am dumb to tell the crooked rose my youth is bent by the same wintry fever. The force that drives the water through the rocks drives my red blood, that dries the mouthing streams, turns mine to wax, and I am dumb to mouth unto my veins how from the mountains spring the same mouth sucks. The hand that whirls the water in the pool, stirs the quicksand, that ropes the blowing wind, hauls my shroud sail, and I am dumb to tell the hanging man how of my clay is made the hangman's lime. The lips of time leach to the fountainhead. Love drips and gathers, and the fallen blood will calm her sores, and I am dumb to tell the weather's wind how time has ticked a heaven round the stars, and I am dumb to tell the lover's tomb how at my sheet goes the same crooked worm.
Beautiful, Hal. Well, we have our second monster movie moment coming up, and
Very good.
we have room in the queue, audience. So if you are going to ask a question, now's the time, because the upcoming segment is going to be the last one for the evening. So get them in now. There is a time limit on this. Come forward. Don't be shy. Doesn't, couple of bucks, gets the question of
Yes,
your
this is your
soul.
moment. Your destiny calls you. You could spend those couple of bucks on a burrito, which would soon be gone, but the answer will linger long if done correctly.
And you know what? That few dollars is so well spent, because you know what that does? That few dollars entertains us all as Dr. Hal answers your question. So it is not just a contribution to Dr. Hal, which in fact it is, but it's a contribution to the community. So do get your question
I
in.
like that line of
Wasn't
reasoning.
that a great line of bullshit?
Yes, yes. Sounds good.
I should get a gig with public television. I really should, man.
Yes.
I miss my calling.
Good work as a political
Oh
fundraiser.
man, you just keep lying.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm frightened how it just rolls off my tongue. Well, anyway, let's go ahead and
I have
play
a
that
great
monster
bill.
movie moment, which is a real gem.
That's right. You'll probably not have seen these images before.
I hope not. Here it comes.
Thank you, Professor Gofflin.
It's almost like she's here tonight.
Yes.
Very cool. Well, yeah, we'll see her next month when we do our next show. November the 17th, if I recall correctly.
That's right.
It's our Thanksgiving show. How do these things happen?
2 days after the full moon, after the moon is at its full, according to the ephemeris. Is the 17th Thanksgiving?
No. It does.
Thank heavens for that.
Yeah, so it's like a week away, but for us, it's the
Yes.
Thanksgiving show.
Right. Well, we will give thanks once it's in the rearview mirror, that's for sure.
Any show that we get through alive is a Thanksgiving show, really.
Yes.
But I have some more questions for you, and
Good. Let's see what we can do with it.
audience, we are in the home stretch, so get those questions into us. Let me see. I have let me find a good one. I'm holding off a couple.
That's your privilege as the host.
Let's see. How about Reverend Puck Amuck? I don't think we've heard from Reverend Puck Amuck before.
All right.
But we'd like to hear from him again. It is a $20 question.
Very good.
So we'd like to, refer to you as an old friend in future, questions that we read. If the Tao that can be spoken of is not the true Tao, why did Lao Tzu write a long book about it?
Well, a good question. But the fact is that a book is not precisely speech, although it is opinion and contains assertions. A book says a lot, more than an aphorism, more than an old saying or snappy bumper sticker like expression. And the reason the Tao is oblique to expression is that it is a complicated matter involving a survey of the entire universe as a thinking and sapient being may know it. And therefore, the many, many shades of meaning which a book, a large accumulation of text, can offer is more likely to capture an impression of the gestalt, if you will, of the true nature of things, even than the poetic inspiration which provides an aphoristic blinding flash of understanding. I hope that my answer makes sense to you, but your question makes a great deal of sense to me. A Poison Tree by William Blake. I was angry with my friend. I told my wrath. My wrath did end. I was angry with my foe. I told it not. My wrath did grow, and I watered it with fears, night and morning with my tears, and I sunned it with smiles, and with false, deceitful wiles, and it grew both day and night, till it bore an apple bright, and for my foe beheld it shine, and he knew that it was mine, and into my garden stole when the night had veiled the pole. In the morning, glad I see my foe outstretched beneath the tree.
I saw a correction come in chat. That's showing here as well, yeah, Reverend Puckamuck. It is actually Reverend Couch Sloth was the questioner for that particular.
All right, I'm looking at it, but I don't see that. However, I trust you.
Good.
It's a shame if we misattribute a question, but you understand this is not done maliciously. That's because we have to deal with the rapid submission of questions and the volume of them which we receive.
Well, yes, and it's not terrible because it turns out that is his partner. That's their partner's name. So, next question. I have one here from Reverend Dr. Big John, another old friend of the show. And this is a $9 question, when X Day arrives, probably next week, the alien space bankers, skull harvesters, will net around 7 billion human brains. What will they be used for?
Well, of course, that's what the aliens skull farmers know, and we do not know. But if our species is of any indication, at the worst, these could be trophies, simply things collected from the field of the dead, which is our former planet. For why would the skull have any other value besides a ceremonial one, unless these aliens are able to reconstruct the individual from the relic left behind, something which is not entirely out of reach for an extraordinarily learned alien technology. A.E. Van Vogt, back in the day, wrote a story about that, quite a good one, in which the aliens resurrected dead humans, trying to find out what happened to them all, and then they resurrect one which they had better left unresurrected. I wish I could remember the name of the story. So the purpose is possibly a sporting purpose, though how does one read the mind of an alien? Or it is a scientific purpose, and more than simply a collector's enthusiasm is responsible. We must hope that the aliens are enough like us that we are able to find some common ground with them, or else our future life with them is likely to be frustrating and unproductive.
I have
How much was the sponsorship there? Did you say $9?
$9, Dr. Howe.
Oh, yes, very good. All right. And you have another one, you say?
I do. I have a couple more coming.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see. This one is from our very good friend, the Great Bloviator. We hear from him almost every show. Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Hello, Dr. Hal. In the resource-constrained future, do you imagine that humans will be miniaturized to conserve materials? And will these micromen be driving tiny cars? Foggily yours, the futurist.
Well, this has been speculated about before. There are some problems with miniaturizing people. One of them is if they get too small, they can't, because of the nature of things, have the brain power that we giants now enjoy. The smaller you get, the more animal you are likely to become. Yes, it wasn't that way for the incredible shrinking man, but we don't really understand how he incredibly shrunk. It's only suggested in that particular narrative. So Would you forgive me if I asked you to summarize the question again?
Not at all. Let me see. How about if I just read the contents
All
back
right,
to you?
please.
In the resource-constrained future, do you imagine that
Mhm.
humans will be miniaturized to conserve
Right,
materials? And will these micromen be driving tiny cars?
right. Well, tiny cars are a lot easier to come by than micro men, but you probably couldn't get the men smaller than about a foot tall and have them still remain human. That is to say, Lilliputians are probably out of the question, since those are only 6 inches tall. But uh, there was a very popular show on Japanese TV called Ultra Q, which was the precursor to Ultraman, the Japanese superhero who is little, becomes big, and fights with a bunch of improbable monsters. In fact, on Ultra Q, there was a different improbable monster in each episode, and it was extremely popular in Japan, these half-hour episodes. In fact, you can even buy them, and I recommend it because they're very entertaining. You get them in a cool metal box with an amazing booklet, and the whole thing only costs in the realm of $10. Well, sir, in one of these episodes, one of the characters in the show encounters a problem. Now, these characters work on a newspaper in Japan, and one of them is a very attractive woman who dresses like a man, dresses like a boy, but is clearly a woman. This reporter is in a group of people who come to experience a scientific announcement. That scientific announcement is that they have developed a micro miniaturizing method, and that to contain an exploding population, they're going to shrink people down to tiny size. In fact, she gets caught in the crowd and is accidentally brought by crowd movement into the area where people are shrunk. So the next thing she's 6 inches high. And then instead of giant monsters rampaging in the miniature cities, they just use ordinary sized people to cause trouble for the shrunken people. What does this show? It shows that the idea has been given consideration before, which approaches serious consideration. And I'm afraid that there is a line of evolutionary thought, which I disagree with vehemently, that it is possible for evolution to have a teleological basis. People who think that birds are dinosaurs have said, among other wrong things, that dinosaurs made themselves small so they could evolve into birds. But there is no long-term purpose in the adaptation, which is the result of successful evolutionary radiation. No, you're not going to decide to get little. And the only thing that would make you little would be a resource deprived environment. Because of this, on islands, the mammalian population often does become miniature. And at certain times in the past, you've had miniature elephants and rhinoceroses living on islands that did not provide all the forage that was available elsewhere. In the secondary era or Mesozoic, animals grew to a huge size, but this was because of an abundant and warm planet which produced enough food to support such behemoths. Still, there are exceptions. Reptilian creatures can grow quite large on small islands and have done so in the past. And during the later Mesozoic, Europe was an archipelago of small islands on which miniature dinosaurs lived, but enormous pterosaurs, the largest flying creatures of their kind or of any kind that have ever lived. The purpose of my mentioning this is that everything that seems a limitation may be an incitement to an exciting stage of future development. Perhaps we can take comfort in this.
Dr. Hal, that was a $30 question.
Oh, $30 question. Well, then I must respond appropriately. This poem is called Calling the Dead. On certain nights, they come back, ghost story fragments lodged in my head. From midnight taxi rides, almost always a woman in a red dress, hollow laughter and a ball bouncing in a playground, lost souls crossing the misty river where Ming offers them soup to forget before their next life. And those afternoons, when my mind would spin with ominous tales, each school in Hong Kong a graveyard. We begged for our turn to go to the loo together, believed ghostly hands would sprout from faucets to bring us back to a wartime colony where Japanese soldiers raced with each other to slash more heads. The girl from my class kept a scrapbook of ghost stories. I learnt that vampires in Qing Dynasty robes don't hop sideways. Some actors never came back from film shoots, and careless children disappear with each UFO. We huddled around a quivering soy sauce dish to see it move through the Ouija board. It's be hard to make dish spirits leave. And other myths of the land of the missing. My first friend in high school, our birthdays a day apart, used to show me her palm lines, one line shorter than the rest. What do you think of the place where you are now? Will we be friends in our next lives? Jennifer Wong.
Beautiful, Hal. I have a $50 question, Dr. Hal, from our very good friend, Dr. Penny.
Holy gazoozes.
Yes. Yes, indeed. And the question is, now you're going to have to work for it. Dear
All right.
Dr. Hal, would you please tell us an Aunt Bertha tale in the voice of Aunt Bertha and conclude it with the Grand Rapids address?
Oh my God. Well, this is certainly esoteric. Yes, it is esoteric, as all matters having to do with Aunt Bertha are. I'm going to need some prefatory explanation here. Years ago in Tucson, Arizona, back before there were computers or any type of entertainment like that, although I recall there were computer labs, and even then they were plotting the modern world in those spaces. The telephone, and by that I mean the landline, was often a source of entertainment. Children could make prank phone calls, impossible today when you can see who's calling, or they could call and hear recorded messages. It so happened that a particular group of fundamentalist Christians from Grand Rapids, Michigan, had something they called Dial a Story, where you could call the numbers and listen to what I, my younger brother, and my friends thought were hilariously silly fundamentalist Christian stories, dramatized like radio plays, with an organ playing music to emphasize the goings-on. These often incorporated the most virulent right-wing politics, of course, were anti-science, anti-evolution, and anti-everything which did not stand with fundamentalist Christianity. And they were presided over by a woman known as Aunt Bertha. It's her voice that one would hear telling these stories, and often she was a participant in them, foiling the actions of little Timmy and Billy, two unchristian urchins who always came to a bad end. Her name was Bertha Trover Shooks, but to this group of humorless individuals. She was the beloved Aunt Bertha, and she presided over a number of tiny, high-voiced urchins who she terrorized with her stories of damnation and lack of redemption. And let me see, was I supposed to tell a whole Aunt Bertha thing? That is kind of difficult. I'm going to have to summarize one of them, which can still be found today online. I know because my friend and assistant K-Rob found it. Is the story about a kid, either Timmy or Billy, who finds a rattlesnake and then keeps it as a pet. Although Aunt Bertha warns him again and again to let that horrible rattlesnake go. My brother and I were good at coming up with our own Aunt Bertha routines, and thus that's why I learned the Aunt Bertha way of speaking. And she would say, "Are you sure you got rid of that horrible rattlesnake?" "Yes, Aunt Bertha." But it wasn't the case. He did keep the snake. And of course, the snake, being a snake and a symbol of evil in the Christian religion, bit the kid. And then not only did he have to suffer from that, but from the endless recriminations about how children should always obey their elders, something which came up again and again in Aunt Bertha productions. There was even a song about it. And to be set on the path of Christian righteousness. Finally, at the end, with the organ swelling into a final chord and the sniveling kid apologizing to Aunt Bertha, would come her benediction or her closure, which was, "I hope you like this story, boys and girls. If you would like a free gift and a picture of me, write to Aunt Bertha, Dial a Story, Box 1, Grand Rapids, Michigan. Goodbye now." And then the recording of a little adenoidal kid's voice would say, "Goodbye." However, I would not advise writing to this address, although I think there is something there, because my brother did write to it, and he pretended to be a Billy or Timmy-esque kid, and on a sheet of lined paper he scrawled crudely with a crayon a note to Aunt Bertha. The upshot of it was he did receive a package, a free gift from the Children's Bible Hour. This contained some Jack T. Chick tracts and a number of stickers that looked like road signs that you could stick everywhere that had Christian messages like "Stop sinning" and "Yield to Jesus," "One way, Jesus," and so forth. Then my late brother, wrote again and received a message from someone named Uncle Charlie, who said, "Aunt Bertha is in heaven now, Timmy. The stories that you heard her tell were tapes," and so forth and so on. I am afraid that this terrible Uncle Charlie may still be controlling the mindless whelps at the Children's Bible Hour. K-Rob found a lot of footage to demonstrate just that. But we exult and are joyful in mocking Aunt Bertha, who meant well, but seems like a smothering influence preventing free thought and intellection. At least that's the way it is, and I hope that my recreation of the Aunt Bertha farewell message was satisfactory, was what you wanted to hear. Here is another poem of Asian origin dealing with a supernatural spirit. It is called "A Little Chionio Guishin Appears in My Kitchen. She snaps the heads off dried anchovies, their eyes a black and hill, burying my toes. I'm breaking doenjang with the flat head of a metal spoon, stirring the boomerang silver bodies she drops. Whenever she feels like showing up, we cook together. She opens the tofu, smashes the watery curd with her foot, and soaks a package of dried kelp in the trash. The brittle pieces, like unspooling magnetic tape. Today, she sticks her white face through this seaweed curtain, red lips smearing, whispering, "Look, look, this is just like my hair. Why don't you ever brush it?" She disappears. Now she chatters about how much salt I'll ingest by putting that much doenjang in, scooping the anchovy eyes and dumping them in the stew. "Aren't you supposed to be bothering men? You're from paradise. Why are you here?" She rises up. Her arms hang like wet ropes, head tilting until her chin points to the ceiling. She cries, "Why am I here? None of my mothers will tell me why I am here." Sucho. And thank you for your question and generous donation.
Yes, thank you very much. Well, Dr. Hal, let me spin those wheels one more time, but I think that may have been the last question of the evening. I saved the best for last.
My brother and I used to make our own versions, with the organ music and everything. We had many Aunt Bertha things, but I have no idea where those recordings are, if I have any of them. And then Phineas Narco made one, which was pretty damn funny. Yes, that Phineas Narco. Anyway, perhaps these will come to light in the process of time's erection of its mighty monument.
Pope Schmutz suggested that we do an Aunt Bertha story every month, kind of like Lake Wobegon.
Have to write it and do it. Once I dressed up as Aunt Bertha and did a poem about how Halloween was Satan's Christmas. At the conclusion, a giant spider falls on me. But puzzling evidence has this footage. I don't know if we could get it.
Let me,
I'll see. Maybe he could provide it to us.
there it is.
So with him, you never know.
Oh my
If you want to see me dressed up as Aunt Bertha, pretending to be Aunt Bertha.
Well, I don't know that we got to do the whole Jonathan Winters thing, but we could.
Yeah,
But
no,
if you
I
want
was
to,
just
sure.
suggesting it. Since there's actually interest in Aunt Bertha, and you can, if you're buying old records, you can often find records of Aunt Bertha's Happy Family, as it is called. It shows her surrounded by these sawed-off midgets, and some of the songs take a very strong anti-science state, because of course science was competing with the idea of being good and going to heaven. Shooting rockets at the moon was bad, but trying to reach God was good, and that sort of thing.
Now, did Uncle Charlie take over her puppet show or whatever it was?
Yes, he took it over, and he's really odious. And you can look it up, but you'll be revolted to see them all marching docilely around while the resolute piano plays, and they're all dressed up in the footage I saw in cowboy outfits, and some little brat is going on about how he's a cowboy for Jesus, wounding up all the strays and so on, meaning catching the unsaved and forcing them to join the fundamentalist, the Christian flock. That you can find online, but who would want to?
It's, St. Joyce and I, at one point in time, we got a real kick out of going out to all the Christmas shows that the churches do.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, massive productions. But the Baptist.
Well, I'm sure some of those would be good, but in the case of Grand Rapids, Michigan, and Bertha Trover Schooks, the fun was that they were not good and so fallible, and yet the people who were doing it could not see that. And smart alecky kids and smart alecky people in general find that a form of entertainment.
Well, and of course, you realize that every production is a labor of love, and people pour their everything into it. But we went to the local Baptist church, and they had professional costumes, professional stage equipment, professional sound, professional lighting.
Well, it's like Halloween, a big
everything.
deal. It comes up once a year.
And but they still had like local actors, so it was a little bit like putting that lipstick on a pig kind of thing. It was.
Here's an interesting artifact. My brother and I also made comics about Aunt Bertha's adventures, and here is one issue of Aunt Bertha's comics. It seems to be somewhat washed out, though. I can't really see it. Maybe if I turn the light elsewhere. Well, that's a pity. I can't really see, but there's a comic book here with Aunt Bertha stories in it. Why can't I even get it visible? There's Billy at the bottom, Aunt Bertha looming over him. The background is the surface of the moon. And here on the other side is the actual historical Aunt Bertha, Bertha Trover Schooks, the source of the voice. Look at that hairstyle. If I'm going to hell for any reason, it's because of all this mocking of Aunt Bertha, which I've done throughout the years. These comics are rare, I gotta tell you.
How I'd like to believe if there is a hell, that's where we're going to see Aunt Bertha.
Yeah.
But you got it wrong.
Well, subgenius heaven is like somewhat like the Christian hell.
We got to get somebody over to your place with a scanner.
Maybe so, since they're, I think this is the only one of these that I have left.
Where is Uncle Onan? Uncle Onan, we need to get you over to Hal's.
I need to write to him and explain the various shows that I do, because in the latest Dobbstown Mirror, he's still not listing them. It's just too confusing, all these different shows that are called Ask Dr. Hal. I've got to write him specifically and say it's this on this date and that on that date and so forth. But we're grateful that anybody follows us in any incarnation.
Well, see, that's why we're the home edition. We differentiate ourselves by being the Dr. Hal version that you can bring into your living room, to which we hope we were able to do successfully.
Safe for work, as they say.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Yeah, fairly safe.
Most.
Yeah, every once in a while we slip in naked pictures in kids' cartoons.
Right. Well, we didn't put those there. Isidore Freeling did, or the animator did.
I would be proud.
Wonderful.
I would be proud to have put those pictures in. I'm
amazed that we were able to show a Warner Brothers cartoon with Bugs Bunny. Why did that one fall through the copyright cracks? Somebody screws something up somewhere, doesn't file papers, and the next thing you know, or maybe they didn't want those naked pictures and Bugs Bunny's strange crotch to be shown. Well, since it is public domain, I should like put real pornographic pictures in there and see how long it takes people to notice them. Just fuzz them out a little bit. You can't quite tell it's Ron Jeremy, but right. If you squint your eyes, it's Jesus. And put Elmer Fudd's head on. Yeah. On the knob, as it were. No, on the Ron Jeremy's shoulder. Oh. You two heads. Just a thought. Well, the thing with two heads. Have we ever used that as a monster movie moment? Ron Jeremy with two heads? No, the movie, The Thing with Two Heads. That. No, we should, though. That's a... Raymond Burr and Roosevelt Grier. Yes, that's... Man. Which is different from The Incredible Two-Headed Transplant, another two-head movie. I have not seen that movie in 1,000 years. We should probably look into doing it. It's out there. We're going to run out of monster movies sometime. But let's hope we can manage to entertain the watchers of our show. We have tons of monsters. We do have quite a lot still in the pipe.
Dr. Billy said Ron Jeremy and Elmer Fudd, the two-headed terror. That would be interesting.
Perhaps.
Three-headed. Okay, let me spin those wheels one more time because I am superstitious. And
All right.
here we go. Loading, 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 loading. Nope. Sorry. Snake eyes.
Well, you can't say you didn't try.
Well, you know, that's what we do. Ladies and gentlemen, let me one more time put the link in for the chat. Dr. Hal, I've already put it over in your chat, so you should be able to see it there.
Mhm.
And we hope to see you all there. And I thank you all for coming out tonight. We have another show coming up on November 17th. And we do ask you to stick around for the final segment of this show. Dr. Hal's going to give his last recitation, which is not to be missed. So, with that, Dr. Hal, anything before we move on to the final part of our show?
Only thanks and an invitation to join us in the after show chat room.
Yep, look forward to seeing you over there, and hopefully no bugs this time. We've experienced a couple of bugs with this, but I think we've got everything right now, so
Me new life.
we'll see. No mess ups this month. See you next month. Please be sure to join us for the next live Ask Dr. Hal Show Home Edition. Sunday, November 17th, 2024, only on Twitch. Visit our website at AskDrHalShow.com for information on this, as well as where to find previous episodes. From there, Dr. Hal is only a finger click away.
The Raven. Once, upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, as I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as if someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, rapping at my chamber door, only this and nothing more. Ah, distinctly I remember it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow, vainly had I sought to borrow from my books surcease of sorrow. Sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Lenore, nameless here forevermore. And the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before, so that now to still the beating of my heart I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door, some late visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. This it is, and nothing more." Presently my soul grew stronger, hesitating then no longer. "Sir," said I, or "Madam, truly your forgiveness I implore, but the fact is I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping at my chamber door, that I scarce was sure I heard you." Here I opened wide the door. Darkness there, and nothing more. Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there, wondering, fearing, doubting. dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the stillness gave no token, and the only word there spoken was the whispered word, Lenore. This I whispered, and the echo murmured back the word, Lenore. Merely this, and nothing more. Back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning. Soon again I heard a tapping, somewhat louder than before. Surely, said I, surely that is something at my window lattice. Let me see then what thereat is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind, and nothing more. Open here I flung the shutter, when with many a flirt and flutter in there stepped a stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the least obeisance made he, not a minute stopped or stayed he, but with mien of lord or lady perched above my chamber door, perched upon a bust of Pallas, just above my chamber door, perched and sat, and nothing more. Then this ebony bird, beguiling my sad fancy into smiling from the grave and stern decorum of the countenance it wore, though thy crest be shorn and shaven, thou, I said, art sure no craven, ghastly, grim, and ancient raven, wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Much I marveled this ungainly fowl to hear discourse so plainly, though the answer little meaning, little relevancy bore, for one cannot help agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with seeing bird above his chamber door, bird or beast upon the sculptured bust above his chamber door, with such name as Nevermore. But the raven, sitting lonely on the placid bust, spoke only that one word, as if his soul in that one word he did outpour. Nothing farther than he uttered, not a feather than he fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered, other friends have flown before. On the morrow he will leave me, as my hopes have flown before. Then the bird said, nevermore. Startled at the stillness broken by reply so aptly spoken. Doubtless, said I, what it utters is its only stock and store, caught from some unhappy master, whom unmerciful disaster followed fast, and followed faster, till his songs one burden bore, till the dirges of his hope that melancholy burden bore of never, nevermore. But the raven, still beguiling all my fancy into smiling, straight I wheeled a cushioned seat in front of bird and bust and door. Then upon the velvet sinking, I betook myself to linking fancy unto fancy, thinking what this ominous bird of yore, what this grim, ungainly, ghastly, gaunt, and ominous bird of yore meant in croaking nevermore. This I sat engaged in guessing, but no syllable expressing to the fowl whose fiery eyes now burned into my bosom's core. This and more I sat divining, with my head at ease, reclining on the cushion's velvet lining that the lamplight gloating o'er, but whose velvet violet lining with the lamplight gloating o'er she shall press, nevermore. Then methought the air grew denser, perfumed from an unseen censer swung by seraphim whose footfalls tinkled on the tufted floor. Wretch, I cried, thy God hath lent thee, by these angels he hath sent thee respite and nepenthe from thy memories of Lenore. Quaff, oh quaff, this kind nepenthe, and forget the lost Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, whether tempter sent or whether tempest tossed thee here ashore, desolate yet all undaunted, on this desert land enchanted, on this home by horror haunted. Tell me truly, I implore, is there balm in Gilead? Tell me, I implore, quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, by that heaven that bends above us, by that God we both adore, tell this soul with sorrow laden, if within the distant Aidenn it shall clasp a sainted maiden whom the angels name Lenore. Clasp a rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Be that word our sign of parting, bird or fiend, I shrieked upstarting. Get thee back into the tempest and the night's Plutonian shore. Leave no black plume as a token of that lie thy soul hast spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken. Quit the bust above my door. Take thy beak from out my heart, and take thy form from off my door. Quoth the raven, nevermore. And the raven, never flitting, still is sitting on the pallid bust of Pallas just above my chamber door, and his eyes have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming. And the lamplight o'er him streaming throws his shadow on the floor, and my soul, from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor, shall be lifted nevermore. Edgar Allan Poe.